He was just a hotel janitor, mopping the shiny marble floors while rich guests walked past without noticing him. To everyone, he was invisible. But one morning, in the middle of the Grand Plaza Hotel's lobby, something happened that no one expected. His phone rang. Against the rules, he answered. And then, he spoke perfect Dutch. The billionaire owner of the hotel stopped in his tracks, staring in disbelief. How could a janitor sound like an international diplomat? That single phone call would uncover hidden corruption, expose years of discrimination, and change David's life in a way no one could have imagined. David Johnson was 28 years old, and every day of his life felt the same. He woke up before sunrise, put on the same gray uniform, and walked through the back entrance of the Grand Plaza Hotel, a place where chandeliers sparkled, guests wore $1,000 suits, and the poor never belonged. To the guests, David was invisible. He mopped floors, wiped tables, carried trash bags, and disappeared into the background. They never guessed that the quiet janitor had once dreamed of standing at podiums, translating for world leaders, and traveling across continents. Few knew that he held a degree in linguistics and could speak 6 languages fluently. Instead of interpreting speeches at conferences, he spent his days scrubbing coffee stains off white carpets. It wasn't because he lacked talent. It was because the world never gave him a chance. Job interviews had been cold and dismissive. Applications were ignored. Sometimes he could feel the change in people's eyes the moment they saw his skin color. He had learned to swallow the rejection, to nod politely, and to keep moving. Inside the hotel, things were no different. White workers were treated as professionals. They laughed with managers, took breaks without fear, even made mistakes without consequences. But for David, the smallest slip could bring punishment. He was constantly reminded of where he stood, on the lowest rung of the ladder, expected to work hard, stay quiet, and never dream too big. Yet, behind his silence, David carried something the hotel would soon discover, a hidden brilliance, a talent no one had ever cared to see. And one ordinary morning, with a single unexpected phone call, the life he had buried would come crashing into the open. David reported for his shift before most guests were even awake. That day, as he bent down to wipe a stubborn mark off the floor, his old cell phone buzzed in his pocket. He froze. Personal calls during work were strictly forbidden. One warning, maybe a write-up. A second time, he could be fired. His first instinct was to ignore it. But the call came again, vibrating with urgency. His gut told him something was wrong. Against his better judgment, he answered. The voice on the other side spoke rapidly, in Dutch. For most people in that room, the words would have sounded like nonsense. But to David, it was as natural as breathing. Without hesitation, he replied in fluent Dutch, his voice calm and steady, carrying the rhythm of someone who had studied the language deeply. What David didn't know was that just across the lobby, seated in a velvet chair, was Mr. Van Doren, a Dutch billionaire and frequent guest of the hotel. He was there for a high-stakes meeting with investors, and his ears instantly caught the unexpected sound. His eyes narrowed, scanning the room, until they landed on David, the janitor, holding a mop in one hand and a phone in the other. For a moment, the billionaire thought, how could the janitor speak his language so fluently? But David's words weren't clumsy. They flowed with precision, with confidence, with the ease of a man who belonged in boardrooms, not janitor closets. When the call ended, David quickly slipped the phone back into his pocket, hoping no one had noticed. His heart raced, knowing he had broken the rules. That's when the shift began. Whispers floated through the lobby. A few guests had overheard. And then came the moment David had dreaded. The billionaire himself rose from his chair and started, walking toward him. The billionaire's polished shoes echoed across the marble floor as he approached. The lobby grew quieter, conversations fading into uneasy silence. David kept his eyes lowered, clutching the mop, wishing he could disappear into the walls. But when Mr. Van Doren stopped directly in front of him, escape was impossible. "Say something," the man demanded, in Dutch. His tone wasn't friendly curiosity. It was sharp, testing, almost accusatory. David hesitated, but then replied softly, his words flowing with ease. For a split second, the billionaire's brows lifted, astonished. Yet the admiration quickly twisted into something darker. The other guests began to watch, some whispering, others smirking, as if waiting for a spectacle. To them, a black janitor speaking flawless Dutch wasn't impressive. It was suspicious, out of place. Mr. Van Doren's voice grew louder. He fired questions at David, one after another, his tone dripping with disbelief, as if trying to catch him in a lie. David answered each one perfectly, but instead of respect, the man's expression hardened. Finally, he turned to the hotel manager, who had rushed over, nervous and sweating. "Why is your janitor pretending to be educated?" the billionaire snapped, still in Dutch. "This man is a fraud. People like him shouldn't be here." The words struck like knives. The manager, embarrassed in front of the wealthy guest, immediately turned on David. "Explain yourself. Where did you learn this? Are you lying to our guests?" David's chest tightened. His gift, the one thing he had left to be proud of, was now being twisted against him. He wanted to shout that he had a degree, that he had studied for years, that his only crime was being born into a skin color that made doors slam shut. But his voice trembled, and before he could speak, the manager yanked the mop from his hands. "Enough. Get back to work. Don't make a scene." That night, long after the lobby lights dimmed and the hotel halls grew silent, David sat alone on the employee bench. His hands trembled, not from exhaustion, but from humiliation. The mop, the uniform, the glares of the wealthy, it all felt heavier than ever. He thought about every sacrifice he had made, every rejection he had endured, and every quiet moment where he had reminded himself to keep going. But tonight was different. Tonight, the world had heard his voice. They had seen his brilliance, even if they refused to admit it. For the first time, David realized the truth. His silence had protected others' comfort, but stolen his own dignity. The following weeks were harder than ever. Whispers spread among staff. Some mocked him behind his back, calling him the janitor who thought he was special. Others avoided him altogether. But a few, just a few, looked at him differently. A waitress whispered, "I never knew you could do that. You're incredible." A bellboy admitted, "Man, I wish I had your courage." And slowly, David began to understand something powerful. Prejudice may try to bury talent, but it cannot erase it. His gift was real. His worth was real. And no billionaire, no manager, no system could change that. One afternoon, weeks later, an unexpected letter arrived. It was from a Dutch professor who had been staying in the hotel lobby that day. He had seen everything, and instead of looking down on David, he saw the injustice for what it was. In the letter, he offered David a chance, a scholarship program, a position in his research team abroad, a doorway into the very world David thought he had lost forever. David sat frozen, tears filling his eyes. For so long, he had believed that the world only saw the color of his skin. But now, someone had finally seen the strength of his mind, and so, the janitor who had once been invisible picked up his bag, not his mop, and stepped toward a new life. Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one call, one voice, one witness to turn humiliation into hope. And now I'll ask you, how many voices, how much brilliance, have been silenced simply because of the color of someone's skin? If you've experienced or witnessed injustice, share your story in the comments. I might even make a video about it to raise awareness and justice. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so together we can spread the message further.